Good evening or afternoon. I am Sue Flagel, and I'm a Democratic candidate for assessor. I've never run for office before, but I have been working in the assessor's office for 28 years. The last 5 years I've been the deputy. And what I bring is a passion for fair and accurate values. I believe that everyone should be treated with respect. I have to follow the data. I have to follow the legislation that's in place. I am also overseeing a monumental software upgrade to a cloud-based system that we're trying to have go live by the end of the year. I've been working with Scott Kersgaard for the last 7 years, and he's been an amazing assessor. He's the first Democrat that I worked for. My time in the assessor's office has been primarily with Republicans. And it really wasn't until I started working for Scott that I saw the beauty of what the Democratic Party holds. And I really have believed that he has helped teach me how to do what I think I should do as an assessor, as a Democratic assessor. So I'm in the primary. I'm excited. I need help and support. I'm having a volunteer event next Sunday at Bruno's Kitchen down in Littleton off of C470, and I need help learning, just getting me to get across the line. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Dougherty, you want to? He's our main speaker today, but right now he's not our main speaker. He's a candidate, right? You want to speak as a candidate?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Michael Dougherty. I am a candidate for Attorney General. I'm excited and honored to be on the ballot in June. I'm running for Attorney General because the fight for our democracy is on. We are facing the greatest threat to our democracy in my entire lifetime. And as someone who's been standing in court for 29 years saying I'm here on behalf of the people and fighting for justice and fighting for the rule of law, this is what I can do in this moment. This is the moment where we all have to step forward and do everything we can to protect our country and stand up and fight for Colorado. I was a prosecutor. I went to community college coming out of high school and put myself through school by loading trucks at UPS at night. After law school, I went back to New York City to work for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I served there for 13 years. I specialized in sex crimes and homicide cases. Moved up through the ranks and I became the deputy chief of the sex crimes unit, supervising 50 sex crimes prosecutors, and ultimately I was put in charge of the day-to-day management of the entire office of 1,300 people. That experience matters because the AG's office has 724 public servants who choose to work there instead of making more money in private practice because they believe in the Attorney General and the mission of the office. And having the legal experience to lead them and inspire them and to fight for our democracy is why I'm running for Attorney General. My wife, Antonia, and I moved from Brooklyn, New York, where we were living while we were both working at the Manhattan DA's office, to work for the Colorado Attorney General's office. So we moved out here for that office. I soon thereafter became the head of the criminal section, and I've handled cases all around the state of Colorado as a deputy attorney general, leading around 100 members of staff in public corruption, election fraud, human trafficking, multi-jurisdictional cases. And for the last 8 years, I've had the honor of serving as the district attorney of Boulder County. I'm here today as your speaker as the District Attorney of Boulder County, but I appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself as a candidate and happy to take any questions you have after we get done with the presentation today. Thank you.
Any other office holders or candidates? Okay, we're going to move. There it comes. We're going to move toward our action team reports. Do we have anybody doing education today? Allison is not here today, so we're going to move to climate. Darlon Chang is going to speak about APA climate efforts.
Hi, I'm Darlon Chang, the Climate Action Team Lead for APA, and we've got Earth Day coming up on April 22nd, and the City Council meetings this month are going to be pretty important because we're leading up to having a City Council vote on the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan, probably in May. It was originally hopeful that we would get it by Earth Day, but unfortunately it's been delayed a little bit. But it's still important to show up at City Council and tell our council members how important it is to vote yes on the plan. So the next meetings for public comment that are available are April 7th and April 21st, which is one day before Earth Day. I plan to be there on April 21st, so I'm going to be organizing a group of APA folks to speak on April 21st. But if April 21st isn't a great date for you, consider April 7th. It's a Tuesday night. It starts at 6 o'clock, and it's usually a pretty quick opportunity to be able to speak for 3 minutes in front of City Council. They let all the public comments happen usually around 6:20, 6:30, so that you can be out of there by 7 o'clock. The other thing that's coming up for Earth Day is that on April 24th, we're going to have the Jefferson County Youth Climate Summit. It's going to be part of the Leadership Summit that's happening every year, but this is the first year that Jefferson County is having the Youth Climate Summit happen as well. So if you know of high schoolers or middle schoolers who would like to attend and go to a Jeffco school, then I'm going to send the details out to the Climate Action email list, and you'll have an opportunity to forward that information to young people that you think would benefit from attending. There'll be about 200 people at that summit, and we're going to have 4 workshops ranging from how do you get environmental clubs started at your school to how do you get into a career in climate. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Carolyn Rowe on healthcare. You got to flourish.
Yeah,
Get that everywhere you go.
I'm Carolyn Rowe. I've only lived in Arvada for 68 years. And I lived right down the street there, and about 10 blocks down, or 10 houses down. Anyway, I've been here forever, and I just joined APA in the fall, and I've had my own health issues. I'm on the healthcare committee. We think that would have helped, but it didn't. Anyway, Kathy cannot be here tonight, so if you don't mind, this afternoon, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read what she gave me to tell y'all. Are you ready? I'm Carolyn. I'm filling in for Kathy. We're advocating a publicly financed, privately delivered universal health care system in Colorado nationwide. I'm leaving some static in my mouth, but outside there will be a couple of flyers if you need to have more information about the principles behind what this issue is all about, plus there's information about our committee activities that are coming up as well. So, thanks to all those who donated to fund the healthcare analysis, which has started. It's based on the 10 essentials, which reduce costs, simplify the access, and improve health. That flyer's out there on the table if you want that information. Snap a picture, take a copy. The next step is to get support from legislators and voters to implement a Colorado single-payer system. Our goal is to get a ballot measure in 2028. Something else is going to happen in 2028. I don't know what that is. One way to get on the state ballot is through a referred measure from state legislatures. The other way is a citizens initiative where people can collect signatures across the state, kind of what's happening right now with somebody else who's trying to get some signatures today. Several healthcare advocates attended the No Kings 3 rally in Arvada last Sunday. We had a table, talked with many people concerned about healthcare. We handed out about 30 flyers, met new activists. You can join us at any time. It's wonderful. Hopefully some of you are here today. Friday, April 10th is Healthcare Movie Night. It starts at 7 p.m. The movie is an oldie but goodie. One of Kathy's favorite comedy documentaries, Michael Moore's Where to Invade Next. He describes American ideas which have been adopted by other countries, like healthy lunches for school kids, and contacts Kathy. And so I've copied this, and it's out there at the desk to get the exact email to contact her to let you know that you want to be a participant. She'll let you know where that is if you want to attend on April 10th at 7 p.m. The next APA Health Action Team is on Saturday, April 18th at 4 p.m. and it's by Zoom. So contact Kathy. You can get her email. It's on one of the flyers out there in the front if you want to participate and hear more.
Thank you. Period at the end. Pat Malone on immigration.
I have a question here from Zoom for
Yes.
Darlan. This is from Hal Feldman. Can you quickly update us as to what, if any, changes have been made to the Climate Action Plan since it was released for APA comment?
Darlan, would you stand? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The main change is putting in resilience, and that's to weather wildfires, prevent wildfires, and to be able to handle power outages. So there's going to be a big section that's added based on city council comment and also public feedback. So resilience is going to be the big change.
He wanted to introduce me, but I'm Pat Malone, and I head up the Immigrant Partnership Team. And guess what? ICE has arrived in Arvada just this week in 2 different locations in central Arvada. They did both get reported to the Colorado Rapid Response Network, which is where you should call if you see anything that you suspect could be. It's for them to send confirmers to verify that, in fact, it is or it is not. So that worked well, but what happened is one person, it was workers at the first site, and they took the workers away safe. They didn't, ICE didn't, the volunteers did. But then they moved on to the Club Crest area. And before the volunteers got there, ICE had detained one person, but their loved ones were moved to a safe place. So it's working as it should, but ICE is not working as it should. Because of that, this morning, Shauna Ambrose and Randy Mormon, who are council members in District 1 and 2, they set up, they got a group of people to go in that neighborhood handing out information, know your rights cards, and in some cases the whistle kits also that many of you are familiar with. They're also going already went this afternoon to a spring fling Easter egg hunt, because there are going to be a lot of kids there, and hand out know your right cards to that community. I did this last month. I strongly urge you to go to the website that's called We Keep Us Safe Colorado. There is a interest form on there. By putting in your information, you'll get directed to the Arvada WKUS, and that group is doing a lot. That's where a lot of the people came from who went out in the neighborhood today. So go there, check it out, see what it has to say. What else? Many of you are already involved in court watch and business outreach, school outreach, lots of other activities, and I can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing. Needless to say, there's room for more. Also, now in the lobby, I always bring these buttons, Protect Immigrants, and there's some big ones also. If you'll wear it, take one. Red cards, definitely take some, but when you wear this, it prompts a conversation, and then you can have that and say, do you have someone in your life who's affected? And they always do, and then you can offer them the red cards. And let's see, Judy, no. I think that's all I have to say, but it's real, it's happening, and I'm quite sure you're going to be inspired by the presentation today about Know Your Rights. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Our political action lead is Tyler Knappy.
All right, thank you all. I will note that, as Pat mentioned, ICE is here. And so this was rather timely in that we last month actually had a meeting discussing the values that our city council holds and how we find some of them to be lacking. So as was noted, we actually had 2 council members, Ambrose and Mormon, who did decide to release a public statement condemning ICE actions. And this was actually prior to the ICE raids that occurred here in Arvada. The same thing was extended to other candidates, other council members who declined to condemn ICE. And so, yeah, so if you're part of the Political Action Committee, you received an email from me telling you how to contact council to tell them that you don't support ICE and that we need to at the very least condemn them, if not take further actions. And if this is of interest to you, we will be having the next meeting on April 16th at 6:30 p.m. If you need contact details, we can fix that up after the meeting. And on that same note, I will be doing membership adjustments. So if you would like to receive emails from the Political Action Committee, or there's other committees you'd like to participate in, or, and what I suggest is become a voting member. So voting members are important mainly because they're the people that help us endorse candidates. And so if you haven't seen the endorsements that we did, we do have endorsements for specific candidates, and in the future, we're going to have town halls with some of those same candidates as well. And I'll leave it with this. If this is of interest to you, if you want to spend more time talking to City Council, please come to the next meeting, April 16th at 6:30 p.m.
And Tyler, when you say you're going to be doing these updates, that's with your laptop? That's with your laptop out in the lobby after this meeting, is that correct? You'll be able to change people's settings for what communications they get from APA? And
That's correct.
great, thank you. Julie Callahan, the social one.
Should I use this or just talk about it?
I'll use it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Julie Callahan. I am social chair. I think the most important thing we can do during a fascist administration is to let everybody know you're not alone. You are connected to a community, and that's what I do. We are going to have book club on Thursday, April 23rd from 6 to 7:30, and the book is called Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. It is about a dystopian future starting in 2025, right? And book 2 of that series is called Parable of the Talents, and we will read that in May. We are going to have a hike and coffee next Sunday, the 12th, at Colorado Tap House. We're going to meet at 8 o'clock and come back and have coffee at 9. We made it through another month. Happy hour will be at my house on May 1st. It's a Friday night. It will be from 5 to whenever. We're probably thinking about 7. But May 1st is also a economic boycott, I believe. So come to my house. Don't buy anything, but we're going to celebrate doing what we do. Thank you.
And Nancy, are you speaking? Sure. Okay, great. Protests and rallies.
I'm not a germaphobe, I'm a carrier right now. Hi, I'm Nancy Mao. I'm on the rally team here with APA. And in case you haven't heard the wonderful numbers from the No Kings rally a week ago today, it was 3,600 people. Great rally. And we have more coming up. Julie alluded to the one on May Day. It is a Boycott the Billionaires rally. And it's going to conflict with your little happy hour. It's from 4 to 6 on May 1st at the Grandview Bridge in Wadsworth, where we have a lot of our events. And we have ongoing rallies every single Sunday, 11 to 12:30 at 80th and Wads. That has grown from a handful of people to like 200, 250 people every single Sunday. It's a lot of fun. We've all gotten to know each other, and I really encourage you to come out to that one. Another one that's getting underway is a rally every single Tuesday at Wadsworth and Ralston Road at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And got a few minutes, stop by, bring a sign, and have some fun and enjoy the passersby. They're always so pleasant. Low Star, the hospital is amazing. It is amazing the support you get out there, and how, I mean, people are nodding here because it's crazy. People honk their horns and it just makes our day. Yeah. It's very easy to be rewarded for that.
It's trending.
Thank you.
And we're ready for the main portion of our meeting, and Pat Malone is going to introduce our speaker.
Me again. So Michael, I'm glad you had a chance to give a little history with your background. So I'll skip over that and just let you know that Michael's going to discuss the role of ICE, the legal protections in Colorado, how to protest safely, and the authority of local and state officials in holding ICE fully accountable. We can't wait to hear about that. So please welcome Michael Dougherty.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is the 4th Know Your Rights presentation I've been doing this week. And we just came from Lyons, where we had a packed room up in Lyons. And when you ask what gives us hope, what gives me hope is rooms like this one, where people are showing up and turning out and standing and fighting for our democracy. Because right now is a time for us to take action. And as someone who's been a progressive fighter, leader, and prosecutor my entire career, all I know is at times of crisis is to step forward and do everything I can. That's why I'm with you today. That's why we've been doing Know Your Rights presentations all around the state of Colorado. And I'm going to take you through the presentation and happy to take any questions as I go through, but also I'll leave time at the end for questions as well. So I want to mention a couple things right at the start. First, I've been doing Know Your Rights presentations since I became district attorney in 2018. When Trump was elected to a second term, two key things happened in the first 24 hours after Trump was elected. Do you remember where you were when Trump was getting the election results and they were coming in and we were all crying and feeling dread? Two things happened. One was my wife Antonia looked at me and said, "You're running for Attorney General." The second was I emailed our immigrant protection team, which we've had in place since 2018 in my office. And I said, let's not get caught flat-footed. We know exactly what the Trump administration is going to do. Let's start ramping up our immigrant protection efforts because they're going to be more necessary than ever. Because we've had this in place since 2018. Immigrants being under attack is not new in this country. Immigrants being taken advantage of and being victimized is not new in this country. They are at an all-time horrific high right now, though. And that's why these presentations are more important than ever, because Colorado is a state where we have more protections in place for immigrants than most other states. But raising awareness and making sure people know what those protections are, and then holding people accountable when they violate those protections is more important now than ever. So I'm going to start by showing you a picture in this next slide that hangs on the wall of my office at the District Attorney's office in Boulder County. So it's a picture of, as you hopefully can see in the back there, two gentlemen sitting in the front of a classroom. The person on the right is my grandpa, Michael Dougherty. The person on the left is my dad, Jim Dougherty. My grandpa and my other three grandparents all came over on the boat from Ireland and settled in Brooklyn, New York, and that's where I was born. And all four of my grandparents came to this country for the freedoms and opportunities this country offered to them then. A path that is made so much more difficult and denied to others now. So this picture hangs on my wall because I'm always humbled and honored to be an elected district attorney not so many years after my grandparents arrived. And that's the embodiment of the American dream. And that's part of the reason I'm here, because the fight for our immigrants is on, and I appreciate Pat inviting me to be a part of this discussion today and all the work this group is doing to stand and fight for our country and our values and our immigrants. But the other thing about this picture, and the reason it hangs on the wall in my office, is my dad was a public school teacher. And he invited my grandpa and other immigrants to come in, and that's what this picture captures. To talk about why they came to the United States of America. And on the right-hand side of the chalkboard behind my grandpa are the names of other immigrants who are going to be speaking to the students that day. And on the left-hand side of the chalkboard is a poem by Emma Lazarus, which is on the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, welcoming immigrants to the United States. We need to return to a time in this country where immigrants are celebrated, where we take pride and honor in the fact that people want to come to this country instead of demonizing them and making them targets. And this picture to me is important on a day where I'm going to talk to you about whether ICE needs a warrant to get past the lobby of a school building. This picture motivates me to keep working and fighting for what we value in this room. And that fight is definitely on right now. So I appreciate the work and the protest that you are engaging in, and I appreciate the energy that you bring to this fight, because this is what we need to return to in this country. And we'll go to the next slide, please. So Pat touched on what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the role of ICE, legal protections that we have in place under the law in Colorado, how we uphold those protections and hold ICE accountable when they violate state law, the role of local and state law enforcement in that fight, how to protest safely when you're out there protesting so that you don't get arrested or you don't get hurt or worse, and how to report misconduct by ICE. We still have power right now. They want us to feel powerless. They want us to lay down and curl into the fetal position. But we have power in three ways. The first is through protest. The power of the people still means something in this country. And we see that, and I'll give you one quick example. When they tried to sell off our public lands last July in the terrible tax bill, the only thing that stopped them from selling off our public lands for profit was the public outcry. That's what got that stripped out of that bill. So we should never underestimate the power of the people. The second is legislation. And I've been involved in legislation to expand immigrant protections here in Colorado, and we'll talk about some of the protections we have in place and some of the things we want to see our legislature do in the future. And the final one is the rule of law. And the courts, in a lot of ways, are the last arena and the last resort for us in stopping a lawless Trump administration from harming people. And I know I'm here to talk about immigrant protection, but I also view the attacks on the trans community being very similar to what we have going on with immigrants in our community right now. And it's the power that we have as prosecutors and attorneys to go to court and use our experience and our ability and our passion in standing and fighting for what's right. That's what brings me here today. I'll share with you, growing up as the grandson of Irish immigrants, I grew up to love this country, and it's a love that's being challenged right now, and it's a love that I fight for. Because we have to get through this dark, terrible time that we're living through right now. And we only do that together, and that's why this room and rooms like this all around the state of Colorado are what fill me with hope. So we'll go to the next slide. I'm going to talk with you today about, as district attorney, what we have in place in my office. And everything I refer to is available on the district attorney website. So if you go on my office's website tonight, if you're not already tired of me by the end of this presentation, if you go on the website tonight, you can find all the materials that I'm going to reference throughout. We've had this immigrant protection program in place in my office since 2018. So, for example, for 8 years in Boulder County, law enforcement has never once asked a member of the community or someone they've stopped for their status. Never once. And when we find out, which sometimes we do, I handle sex crimes cases still to this day. If I ask a victim, like, what are your concerns, and they share with me that they're in the country and they're undocumented, we have never once in 8 years reported that to the federal government. As local and state law enforcement, that is not our job, that is not our responsibility. We do not assist ICE. That's why I was asked last year to join in the fight to expand immigrant protections for the entire state of Colorado. And what we had in policy in Boulder County since 2018 is now the law for the entire state. So law enforcement is prohibited by law from asking anyone for their status, and if they learn it, to report it to the federal government. It's absolutely prohibited, and we'll talk about the sanctions that are in place that stop that from happening. Also, we do the Know Your Rights presentations. We have a U-Visa certification program as well. U-Visas are a certification that a sheriff or district attorney, including your DA, Alexis King, can fill out indicating someone's cooperated as a witness or a victim and ask the federal government to allow the person to remain in the country for a number of years because they've been cooperative. We also, as I mentioned, fight for legislative changes in my office, and I've been a part of leading that for the past 8 years. And we have, since 2019, a plea policy for any case where there's immigration consequences. So there are certain criminal offenses that could trigger deportation. For example, a shoplift. Someone shoplifts from Target, they can be subject to deportation as a result of that shoplift. So in 2019, I set up a policy in my office with help from immigration attorneys where deputy DAs are required to consider other pleas at the same level. So it's not as though we're dismissing the cases, we're still doing justice. But instead of a theft on a shoplift charge, consider another charge at the same level to resolve the case that won't trigger deportation because it's such a severe consequence. So we take that into account because my mission is to do justice and to fight for what's right. And to me, given the immigration consequences, we've had this in place since 2019, and it's been really effective. It's a model now for other district attorneys' offices around the state of Colorado. And I think it's really important for us to think about, in terms of doing justice, that this is an important piece of that. I will say, funny story, if I could just inject a moment of humor here. I was at Target recently with my kids. I have twins. And I put a case of water at the bottom, on the bottom of the cart, and I put stuff in the cart. And as I was checking out, I forgot to put the water up on the cash register. And I know. And we got out to the car, and I realized I was putting the stuff in the back of the car. I realized, I'm like, oh, I didn't pay for the water. And my daughter went, "The district attorney is a shoplifter! The district attorney is a shoplifter!" I'm like, "Shh, stop, you don't want to say that." So thankfully I went back inside, and this is not about how my criminal case went after that. But if I were in the country and had issues on my immigration status, I was in a jurisdiction where they're allowed to consider that and what the plea should be. Because the shoplift should not trigger immigration consequences for people. So that's why we have this plea policy in place since 2019. So this is not what I promised to do in the future. This is what we've been doing since 2018. Because the fight is on, but it's been true for many years in our country. We'll go to the next slide, please. This is a picture you're all too familiar with. It's a picture that brings you out to protest. It's a picture that prompted Pat to invite me in today. It's a picture that should not exist in the United States of America. I should have to take down these masks and identify themselves. Do you agree with me on this?
Yes, absolutely.
What they're doing here undermines confidence and trust that people have in law enforcement at every level. And it denies people transparency and accountability, and I think it's 100% outrageous. I was a prosecutor at the Manhattan DA's office for 13 years, and I handled serious and horrific cases my entire time there. And as district attorney of Boulder County, I prosecuted the King super shooter, and took that case to trial, and I tried that case myself. And I'm prosecuting the Pearl Street firebomber currently, who committed a horrific anti-Semitic act of terror and hate in Boulder County last summer. And I led the Marshall Fire investigation for my office and for our community. All the law enforcement officers on those cases, none of them wear masks. The idea that this is being done for the safety of ICE is complete BS. Yes, thank you, Harriet. It's complete BS. There are two ways we can get these masks down. One is through lawsuits, and Attorney General Phil Weiser joined other states in bringing a lawsuit to demand that ICE take down their mask and wear identification. The second is through legislation, and I want to see legislation passed in the state of Colorado that gets these masks down. I promise you I'll continue to fight to make this happen. The other thing, ICE received $45 billion with a B dollars last year for their budget. They're now the largest federally funded law enforcement agency in the entire country. And I've worked with the FBI on serious cases. The idea that ICE now has more money for their funding, to me, is outrageous. Part of the reason they do is so they could buy warehouses to warehouse people. Private prisons should be banned in the United States of America.
Yes.
And it starts here in the state of Colorado. We should pass legislation banning private prisons. That has to happen, and it's overdue. We have 2 private prisons operating at the state level currently, Benton County and Crowley County. Those prisons are owned by for-profit corporations that have every incentive to put the money back in their pocket instead of in the care and treatment of those in their custody. They have lower rates of successful rehabilitation, lower pay for employees, and more complaints of inhumane treatment. One thing I want to see in Colorado is us pass a law, as they have in California for the last 9 years, allowing the Attorney General to have authority to go into private prison facilities, including immigrant detention facilities, and conduct inspections and bring civil rights actions or criminal charges against those working in those facilities or the corporations that run them. We can't keep putting corporations and profit over our people. So private prisons should be banned. We'll go to the next slide. We do have, when I look at Minneapolis, reason to be even more concerned about what's coming into Colorado. And as you click through the next few bullets on the slide, you'll see I view what happened in Minneapolis to be an act of retaliation by the federal government. I say that for a couple reasons. They don't have a higher percentage of undocumented immigrants in Minneapolis. They do not have a higher percentage of undocumented immigrants with criminal records in Minneapolis. What they have is a state that has laws and policies contrary to the worldview of the Trump administration. So as a result, they get 3,000 federal agents flooding Minneapolis.
Right.
And perhaps not surprisingly, we have people getting hurt and people getting killed by ICE agents and federal agents there for this surge on immigration. And we'll just start to go through this, but one of the things I did from the very beginning was join an amicus brief in federal district court in Minnesota demanding that ICE provide, and the federal government provide, an objective rationale for being there, other than that this is purely retaliatory. And we can go to the next bullet point, please. And what I saw happen with Renee Good and Alex Preddy being killed was tragic and horrific. Tragic and horrific because of the images you're picturing in your mind right now.
Yeah.
seeing people being gunned down by federal law enforcement in their community. Yes. But I also found it to be maddening. Maddening because of this. Maddening because in my jurisdiction and throughout the state of Colorado, when law enforcement uses deadly physical force, there are independent, objective investigations conducted by multi-agency teams, separate from the agency that uses force. So for example, if Arvada Police Department uses deadly physical force, they cannot, by state law, be a part of the investigation. And you have a multi-agency team that conducts the investigation and then provides it to your district attorney. And she conducts a transparent, thorough review and decides whether to bring criminal charges or not. So for example, I've successfully prosecuted police officers in my career because no one is above the law. And one example would be, as I give this presentation, we have 2 sheriff's deputies from Boulder County in prison currently for killing a young man in their custody. I'm prosecuting right now a paramedic who's charged with killing a person of color who is in police custody because no one is above the law. But the reason we were able to bring those prosecutions, the reason I was able to hold those people responsible is because we have a multi-agency team that conducts independent, transparent investigations. And what the federal government did was the exact opposite of that. Locking down those crime scenes, secreting away witnesses and evidence, denying local officials access. I will tell you, in the state of Colorado, and right now in Boulder County, if ICE commits a crime, there will be a full investigation and there will be consequences. I promise you that. No one is above the law. And there are different things we could do within the justice system to ensure that. Sometimes when I say this, people ask, well, what are you going to do if the federal government refuses to cooperate? And what I would share with you is most murderers do not cooperate with the investigations. We still have a duty and an obligation and the means to get justice. We have to do that. And just speaking candidly with you here, in the first hours and days after Renee Good was killed, the folks in Minnesota, District Attorney, Attorney General, Governor, they should have been out front right away saying there's going to be a full investigation and consequences. They eventually got there. But we have to be ready for this to happen in Colorado. Because as you heard, ICE is already here. And these actions, I worry, are going to continue to escalate. We'll go to the next slide. So birthright citizenship, and you could just click through these, please. Thank you. Birthright citizenship, to me, was the start. Trump takes office, he takes the oath to uphold the Constitution, and that very same day, the first day in office, he issues an order revoking birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship is a constitutional right. It's in the plain language of the U.S. Constitution. If you don't agree with me that it's the plain language of the U.S. Constitution, I would ask you to agree with the U.S. Supreme Court, which in 1898, said birthright citizenship is a constitutional right. I do have hope because of the rule of law. I say that because the attorneys general from around the country, including Phil Weiser, brought lawsuits to stop birthright citizenship's revocation from going into effect. Thousands of people could have been rounded up if they didn't take that action. The U.S. Supreme Court just heard the argument on it earlier this week. They'll issue a decision on it before June, because that's when the term ends for the U.S. Supreme Court. Based on the questioning by the Supreme Court justices, I'm hopeful that they're going to uphold the rule of law, just as some federal district court judges have. So this federal district court judge, who was appointed by Ronald Reagan, said in his decision that in over 4 decades on the bench as a federal district court judge, he's never seen anything as blatantly unconstitutional as Trump's order revoking birthright citizenship. So I'm hopeful that the U.S. Supreme Court will reach the same conclusion and push back on the Trump administration. And the rule of law is the only defense we have right now when it comes to things like that. So we do have protections in place. And I'm going to go through those protections and talk about how we can uphold those protections. One of the protections we have is for courthouses in Colorado. I think you'd agree with me that when someone's a victim of domestic violence, they should be able to call the police for help, go to the hospital for treatment, and come to the Justice Center so we could hold the offender fully accountable without fear that they or their kids are going to be deported. Do you agree with me on that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I will say, I have conversations with people who don't share the same view on immigration that you and I think, share. I think it's safe to say if you're in this room, we're on the same page when it comes to immigration. But there are those who don't share that view. But I've never in all my years had anyone disagree with me on the domestic violence victim. So even on social media, where there are people who put comments below the Know Your Rights trainings that we post and so on, I'll say, well, do you agree that a domestic violence victim, and I'll say it. And they'll say, well, yes, I agree on that. There's some shared knowledge around humanity in the moment that people should be able to have justice and have care and have treatment. And in Colorado, we actually have the law that provides for that. So courthouses are protected spaces. So in 2019, before this was the law, ICE came into our courthouse in Boulder County and picked up someone who was charged with sex abuse on a child, sexual assault on a child. And then they issued some public statement saying, this is public safety for Boulder County. And I issued a public statement saying, this is actually public failure for Boulder County. Because the defendant is gone, the victim will never have her day in court, there'll never be justice, the offender is somewhere free in another country, but there'll be no consequences because criminal cases can't go forward. So victims and defendants should be able to come to courthouses so we can see cases through to completion. That's why this law exists in Colorado. So courthouses, the walkways, driveways, and parking lots are all protected spaces. If ICE violates this, there are sanctions. The individual can bring a lawsuit for false arrest. The district attorney and chief judge can bring a contempt of court order against the ICE agent or ICE agents. Also, the attorney general can bring a civil suit against the ICE agent or ICE as an agency. An analogy to this would be Phil Weiser brought a lawsuit against the Mesa County Sheriff's deputy. As you may recall, he stopped a young woman traveling from Utah on I-70 towards the metro area. He conspired with ICE via text message, and after releasing her from the traffic stop, ICE picked her up, detained her, and took her into custody. When this conspiracy was discovered, Phil Weiser brought a lawsuit against the Mesa County Sheriff's deputy because of the state law. And that Mesa County Sheriff's deputy is no longer in law enforcement in the state of Colorado. So that's the power of the rule of law. Yes. We'll go to the next slide and we'll talk some more about takeaways for courthouses. What this really means in practical terms, if someone's being pulled over for a traffic stop and they have immigration concerns, they should pull over. Law enforcement not allowed to ask them their status and not allowed to report it to the federal government. Domestic violence victims, witnesses, should all cooperate with law enforcement without concern for immigration consequences because they're protected under state law. And I think that's a really important point to try to make sure we get the word out to the community on that because people are hiding in the shadows right now more than ever. There are other areas that are protected. So when Trump took office for the second time, he issued an executive order revoking protections that were in place for hospitals and schools. I'm really proud to live and work in a state where we responded. And I and others helped bring forward Senate Bill 276. Senate Bill 276, as you can see on the next slide here, put those protections in place under state law. So now schools, child care facilities, healthcare facilities, including hospitals, urgent care, doctor's offices, treatment centers, rehab centers, it's a long list. ICE is prohibited from making any immigration-related arrest in or around those areas. The idea being, of course, that people should be able to take their kids for their education or take family members for medical care without fear that they're going to be picked up and deported as a result. Also, when it comes to public schools, child care facilities, ICE is prohibited from entering unless they have a warrant signed by a judge. And every time I say warrant during this presentation, what I mean is it has to say warrant at the top and be signed by a judge at the bottom. It's not an administrative warrant, not a detainer, not a letter, not an email, not a holiday card. But it says warrant at the top, signed by a judge at the bottom. So that's really important to keep in mind. So public schools, child care centers, healthcare centers, public libraries cannot allow access and cannot turn over information to ICE absent a warrant. And I think that's really important. We'll talk more about that as we go into the next slide. So Senate Bill 276, which is now the law in the state of Colorado as of last June, also prohibits any information sharing by any publicly funded agency, organization, or entity. So what that means is you go to your public library, let's say ICE comes in behind you, and they go up to the 20-year-old at the front desk who's working part-time that night, and they say, I want all your information on Doug Smith. The library clerk, the employee, has to say, I can't give it to you unless you have a warrant. And under the state law, the library has to have a policy in place so the employee can be made aware of this in advance. I don't expect every 20-year-old who's working part-time at the library to know what Senate Bill 276 requires. So the law requires that the library inform employees of this as of last September. Also, what we got passed in this law was every defendant who appears in court is read a list of questions before they enter a plea of guilty. Have you had an attorney to assist you? Is your plea being made voluntarily, knowingly? There's a whole list. On that list now is, are you aware of any possible immigration consequences as a result of this guilty plea? If an immigrant was not informed of that right, they can get their guilty plea back, as we call it, and continue to fight the case. Because they did not make a fully informed decision about pleading guilty if they weren't informed of the possible immigration consequences. That's true now in Colorado, whether it's a petty offense or a homicide, that they have to have been informed of immigration consequences at the time of the guilty plea, otherwise the guilty plea is vacated and they can continue to contest the case. Also, and this is an important one, for jails, in every county in Colorado, jails are not allowed to hold people to wait for ICE to arrive. So this law makes very clear that individuals who are going to be released from jail, either because they served their sentence or bond has been posted, the jail has 6 hours to get them out through the administrative process, 6 hours total. They can't hold them longer. The reason that's really important is because ICE doesn't have enough resources to be at every jail all day long waiting for people to be released. Previously, ICE used to call a sheriff, particularly friendly sheriffs to ICE, and say, we'll be there tomorrow, can you hold the guy until tomorrow? And the sheriff would say yes. This makes clear that's actually an unconstitutional arrest, which makes sense, right? Let's say, it's hard to imagine Pat Malone getting into a bar fight, but you never know what's going to happen. Let's say Pat gets, she would? Okay. Let's say one of us gets into a bar fight and gets arrested, and the rest of us all chip in for the bond money. If we go to the jail tomorrow with the bond money, the jail shouldn't be able to tell any of us, regardless of immigration status, come back on Tuesday, we're really busy. This makes clear they're not allowed to hold anybody beyond their release, including for ICE. So I think that's an important provision to be aware of. Also, it prohibits anyone within the justice system from providing information to ICE absent a court-approved warrant. So if ICE were to call my office and say, well, calling about this particular case, we will not give them information, not just because it's my own philosophy and approach, but the law now prohibits us from doing so unless they have a court-approved warrant. This slide just stands for the proposition I hit on, that these agencies, the publicly funded agencies and organizations, have to have these policies in place as of last September. So we're going to go through, and you could just click through all of these. We're going to talk briefly about the authority of ICE, and I'll tell you why it's important. Federal law enforcement, which includes ICE, can enforce federal immigration laws. They do not have the power, though, to enforce state and local laws. So, for example, if you're leaving here and you roll through a stop sign and an ICE agent sees it, they are not legally authorized to stop you and give you a traffic ticket. They do not have that power under the law in Colorado. The reason that's important is when you, as you may recall, after Renee Good was killed, there was a lot of discussion about whether she was interfering with ICE or simply trying to drive away. The reason that was such a point of controversy was this. If she was simply trying to drive away, they don't have any right to stop her for a traffic offense. That's why you heard people on the other side of the issue saying, no, they were trying to stop her for interfering with ICE. If it's interference with ICE or assault on an ICE officer, they can't make an arrest. They can't make an arrest for any state or local law violation. So I think that's a particularly important point. Also, two things on warrants. First, ICE can make an arrest for an immigration violation without a warrant if they believe the person's subject to deportation and the person's a flight risk. Where ICE continues to violate the law is they're arresting people who've been in the country for 30 years that have kids, jobs, homes, lives here. So there's a case pending in federal district court with an ally and good partner of mine in these efforts, Hans Meyer, Hans and I sometimes do these presentations together, and Hans' firm is representing a number of plaintiffs, immigrants, who have been held in custody even though they're clearly not a flight risk. That case is making its way through federal district court in Denver, and thus far all the hearings have gone our way. They've all gone the way you would hope. So I'm hopeful that we'll get a good decision out of the federal district court judge. Also, as you see on this next bullet point down, ICE cannot enter private space like a home without a warrant or consent. This is true for local, state, and federal law enforcement. They come to your house, they knock on the door, they say, "Can I come in?" You could say yes if you want, but that decision's up to you. If you say no, they can't enter without a warrant. And I want to be really clear on that. And that's true regardless of citizenship status. When you look at the US Constitution, it doesn't say search and seizure for US citizens. It says for all persons. That language is really important. There's never been any doubt in the courts that that applies to all people within the United States, regardless of citizenship status. We'll go to the next slide, please. I want to touch briefly on the training of ICE agents, just to highlight the lack of training for ICE agents. The Trump administration, with some pride, announced signing bonuses of $50,000 for ICE officers and a reduction in training. And we're seeing the horrific results of that time and time again on our streets throughout this country. They go to training for a few weeks. To become a member of law enforcement in Colorado, you have to go through training for about a year before they're out on the streets in their community working patrol. Between the state academies that are run by the Attorney General's office and then the agency academies after they're done with the state academy, they usually end up 9 months to a year of training for local law enforcement in Colorado. And they still make mistakes, and they still get things wrong. So it's unfortunately and tragically no surprise that ICE, after a few weeks of training, is out on the street and committing some really horrific assaults on people. And they have to be held accountable. That has to happen. We'll go to the next slide. So this data, I need to change this because at the end of last year, roughly a third of everyone being arrested by ICE had a criminal conviction. As they've continued to escalate their efforts and ratchet up, that number is now down to 14%. So we need to push back on that false narrative from the Trump administration when they're saying we're just arresting the worst of the worst and criminals. 14% have a criminal record that are being picked up by ICE currently. Less than 2% have any gang affiliation. And it's a complete misrepresentation to say otherwise. So what can we do? You can film ICE, and under state law in Colorado, you could film state and local law enforcement as well at any time. You cannot interfere or obstruct. You put yourself at risk of arrest or injury or worse. I will say I was given this presentation on a Saturday a few weeks ago down in La Plata County in Durango. Durango's a beautiful town. I actually lived there for a month prosecuting a cold case murder of a 12-year-old boy, conducting the trial down there for them. It's a beautiful place, but they've had significant run-ins with ICE in the last 6 months there. So when I was down there, there was an older gentleman in the back of the room who said, "Can I bring my gun with me? I have a concealed carry permit. Can I bring my gun with me when we protest ICE?"
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea, is right. I said, "You can, but I'm a very goal-focused person, just in my life generally. I'm very goal-focused. So what's your goal when you go to the protest?" He said, "My goal is to speak up and to document what they're doing." I said, "If that's your goal, bring your phone. Don't bring your gun, because you're going to be outnumbered and outgunned. So be smart about what you're doing." So just knowing that if you stand between the ICE agent and the target of their arrest, you could be subject to arrest and prosecution in federal court. So just know that. But you can film from a distance and take that recording, and I'll talk about what to do with it in a moment. If they ask to take your phone, you can give consent if you want and turn over your phone. If you say no, they need a warrant to take your phone. They need a warrant right then and there. They can't say, "Give it to me, I'm going to go get a warrant." So you can hold on to that phone and hold on to the evidence you've captured on that phone. You can also, and I think it's worth doing this, you could demand that ICE provide identification and take down their mask. State law, federal law do not require that as yet, but I think it's worth doing that and trying that and capturing that on video. And you're permitted to film vehicles and license plates as well. But there's more we can do, and you'll see on the next slide, and you can just click through these, please. Thank you. First, you're a business owner, so you own a restaurant, construction site, hotel, or you work in any of those places, putting up private employee-only signs, private, it's just a piece of paper, it has legal power. So law enforcement, including ICE, cannot cross the threshold into a private area, an area that's marked private, without a warrant. So for example, I went to a diner in Boulder County a few months ago actually. I love diners, separate conversation. But I go to the diner, and between the seating area and the kitchen, it's a big sign, private employees only. That sign brought a smile to my face. Because if ICE comes in, they can't cross that threshold without a warrant. But also practicing with employees in advance, because let's say you have a 20-year-old waiter working that day, and ICE comes in and says, "Is Joe in the kitchen?" That 20-year-old, like all of us, have a right to remain silent. So training them in advance to say, "I'm not going to talk to you, I'm not going to answer any questions, you have to call my boss, you have to call my manager." And making sure they don't give them permission. So practice with employees is really important, going over that in advance. Also making sure immigrants who work there prepare a family preparedness kit and fill it out. Much like you might have for your home if there's a fire or a flood. The immigration prep kits, though, the sad and scary reality of those is that they also include sections on what do you want to have happen with your car, your house, your kids. There are 2 reasons to fill it out, though. The first is so that people know what your wishes are if you're picked up and subject to deportation, because it happens very fast and with no notice. The second is when it comes to retaining an attorney for the immigration case, the attorneys charge less for the family if this is filled out. Because part of their work, part of the hours they put into it is trying to piece all this together. Family, the child custody, what you're going to do with the house. So this being prepared in advance actually reduces the cost for the immigration attorney. So it has a practical impact as well. One thing I would stress, and this has been true for as long as I've been alive, immigrants are taken advantage of because people think they're vulnerable. Immigrants should be paid a fair wage. They should be paid the same as everyone else. This is not just part of Trump 2.0, but this has been true for all the time I've been a prosecutor, that we see immigrants being taken advantage of. It's why in 2019, as part of an effort to get the wage theft law passed in Colorado, it's a felony to rip off low-income workers and immigrants. So making sure immigrants are paid a fair wage is something I always want to stress. We'll go to the next slide. All right, so if you're in the back, I imagine you may not be able to read the print on the right-hand side of the screen. But this flyer is one that we put together in Boulder County. It's in English and Spanish. It's also available on the district attorney website. It captures everything I've covered here and also includes the statute numbers. So in other words, the legal references, so you can look it up. So you're not just, I'm not making this up, I think you know that, but point being, you can look it up yourself in terms of what the law and the protections are that we have in Colorado. Also, it stresses that no one is above the law. And when ICE commits crimes in Colorado, there will be a full investigation and ICE will be held accountable. It also includes the information on how to report misconduct by ICE. So you could do that in a number of ways. Local law enforcement. I really encourage you, when ICE shows up, and you heard from Pat about contacting the rapid response team, that is a great step. I would add call 911. Because when law enforcement responds, their job is to keep the peace. And there are 2 other things we have in Colorado. One is law enforcement has a legal duty to intervene when they see another member of law enforcement committing a crime. They have a legal duty and responsibility to intervene if they see ICE committing a crime. So that's an important thing to be aware of and to hold people responsible to. Also, when they show up at a situation like that, they're required to turn on their body-worn camera. And that's the best evidence you can have in those moments. So call 911. Even if you're living in a jurisdiction where you're not sure of or have reason to doubt law enforcement's view on immigration, you're still getting the body-worn camera video and the duty to intervene. So I encourage people to call 911. You can make a report to the district attorney's office in your jurisdiction. You can also make a report. The Colorado Attorney General's office now has an online portal on their website to make reports about ICE directly to the Attorney General's office. So I think that's an important thing to do. And I'm gonna, on this next slide, thank you. My email's there, might be hard to see. Okay, could have just said it's too far. You have to say bad color. But that is a bad color. I'm going to change that. And then my cell phone number, because you look like a trustworthy group. Most of you. Trustworthy group. So my cell phone number is 303-590-5176. And I've always believed as a public servant I should be accessible and answerable to the people, especially now, so feel free to reach out to me. I keep giving this number out. If you call me after 11 or midnight, my wife's going to take a different view of this. So, but I really mean it. You could text me or call me. So also, Pat has my cell phone number and email, and she can send it out to the entire group. So if you're not with us in the room and you can't see it, happy to provide it to anybody. I'm going to stop there, and if we have time for questions, I'd love to take some questions. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the duty to intervene.
Please use the mic.
Oh,
Yeah, if you want to come up to ask your questions, so we can get you on camera as well for the other people watching on Zoom. Thank you.
my question is about the duty to intervene. Have any ICE agents been prosecuted in the state of Colorado for breaking Colorado law?
Good question. The answer is not yet. There is an ongoing investigation into an assault that happened in La Plata County where the district attorney is nearing a final decision on whether an ICE agent should be prosecuted for assault that took place in La Plata County, and that decision will be made public probably in the next couple weeks. Tyler.
I'll do the same.
You
I enforce my own rules. Okay, so my question is actually about filming. Are there setbacks that are required to be considered not within interference range and things of that nature?
So it's a question I get often, so I'm glad Tyler asked. There's no set number of feet. You sometimes hear 8 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet. There's no magic number or statutory number of feet. It's you can't stand between or obstruct any member of law enforcement, including federal law enforcement, ICE, and whatever action they're seeking to conduct. So let's say, for example, Tyler's coming to arrest me right now. He's ICE, he's coming to arrest me. Pat can sit right there and film the entire thing. It doesn't matter how far away she is, it matters where she's positioned. So she can film the whole thing. If Pat comes up and stands before me and tries to film Tyler doing it then, she could be arrested and prosecuted for obstruction or interference. Doug?
So I know, and yeah, I apologize, I'm not going to get up, but that's all right. With these nonprofits be declared domestic terrorism or
Close to your mouth.
Mm-hmm. Is that it? With nonprofits declared to be domestic terrorism, and also with some of these targeted individuals potentially being criminals or maybe having charges pressed against them, how would you define give aid or comfort? And to what extent are we taking risks to assist these people or to assist our own nonprofits and groups? How would you navigate that question?
So I think the Trump administration, in one of the many ways they've been lawless and retaliatory, is declaring nonprofits to be domestic terrorism organizations. That's happened, when you look at the number of nonprofits in the country, relatively infrequently, but it has a chilling effect on other nonprofits and on people who want to contribute to nonprofits. I will say, and I'm so glad Doug brought this up, when we think about what each one of us can do, on that list from my perspective is volunteering to help immigration-related nonprofits. So Remain is one in the state of Colorado. It's the Rocky Mountain Immigrant Action Network, so the acronym is RMIAN, Remain. Donating to them, volunteering time with them, that's one thing we can all do to help them. I would be floored if anybody was actually prosecuted for providing volunteer work or contributing to an organization like Remain or El Comité in Boulder. The other piece of that is if you have someone living in your home who's in the country without legal status, I have not heard of any prosecutions or arrests resulting from having someone in the home. Where you're going to see more of a likely arrest and prosecution is, let's say an immigrant's running down the street and ICE is pursuing and you open your front door and you say, come in. and you try to actively assist and hinder, obstruct, and interfere with law enforcement, I think that's where the danger is more likely to happen.
So not opening the door, but doing other things, like keeping.
Actively interfering, yes. Yes. I think they want you to come up, I'm sorry.
They do.
So I had a follow-up question to Tyler's question, which is if, let's say you're filming an interaction, you do intervene, does that compromise the evidence that you have collected to that point?
So when you say intervene, if you mean you end up being arrested for obstructing, that is going to be problematic. First of all, because you've been arrested, but second of all, at some point during your detention, your phone is going to be taken from you. You should be able to get it back as soon as you're released, but that is a factor to consider, yes. Yes?
I just want to say around phones, you might want to turn off facial recognition.
Please use the microphone.
I can actually,
Yeah.
if you don't mind me jumping in.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You know what I was going to say.
It's a great point, and if I don't get it right, and guessing what you're going to say, you tell me. On my phone, to get in, I punch in my ID. That is the best protection you can have, because someone could hold up your phone to your face and get in, or put your thumbprint on your phone and get in. So if you're worried about the security of your phone, use the keypad number system. Is that what you were going to say?
They can legally do biometrics.
What's that?
They're legally allowed to use biometrics. They're not legally allowed to use information out of your brain.
Correct. So they're not allowed to force you to give over your key code. They can hold up the phone in front of your face whether you give permission or not. So that's why your point is a really good one. Having the passcode to get into the phone is the most secure you can have. Taylor.
All right, I have a question here from Ricky Jansen. Is a vehicle included as a safe private space, just like a house or other private space, that prohibits ICE from detaining anyone without a legal warrant?
Yes.
And go ahead and repeat it, just
Sorry.
Thank you.
Do vehicles, so the point that Taylor's making on behalf of the individual online is that cars that are closed have the same protections as homes. To get in, you have to have a warrant to get into the car unless you have consent. Yes. Pat?
So laws are great, we have good ones, but they don't abide by it. They break into houses, they break into cars. So know your rights are great to know them, but they're not abiding by it. So what do you do about that?
You call him.
Videotape it. Get it on video. Right? Got it.
Pat's right to ask this question, and it's a valid question. And I'm not here to tell you ICE is going to follow everything we have under state law. But I'm here to raise awareness around what the state law protections are, and to make sure they're being held accountable when they violate them. That should not be how it works with law enforcement. We shouldn't be talking about what to do when they violate the law, but you're right in your question. But it's making sure we have an attorney general, a district attorney, a police chief, a sheriff who's going to make sure the laws are enforced at every level. So for example, if you haven't done this already, I would encourage you to have Sheriff Marinelli, who's your Jefferson County Sheriff, come and talk with you. Or send a small group to talk to her and say, have you informed your sheriff's deputies that you're not allowed to share information, not allowed to cooperate, that they have a duty to intervene, and make sure she's engaged. And she's great, and she and I work closely together, so I'm sure she'd be willing to do it. I'm happy to help with that. But also making sure that the police chiefs are. So for example, I was down in Walsenburg a couple months ago on a Saturday morning. A third of the community in Walsenburg are immigrants. And they don't believe the police chief there is an ally. They think he's an ally of ICE. But I asked them, have you talked to the police chief? They said, no, we don't think it's worthwhile. So, make a long story short, I reached out to the police chief. He wants me to come back so we can do the presentation together and go over it together. Now, I'm not saying, I don't know if he's 100% on board or not, but that conversation goes a long way. Even just having documentation showing that you did the outreach, saying I want to come talk to you about this, this, and this, the things we're covering here. Even if they say no, at least you have them on notice that this is the state law and that people are watching and they're going to be held accountable when they violate it. Yes?
I'll talk loud and you can repeat it.
Sure.
If I'm filming and I'm assaulted by an ICE officer, do I have the right to defend myself?
So if you're filming and you're assaulted by an ICE officer, do you have the right to defend yourself? Yes, you do. So the direct answer is yes, you do. And that's true for any member of law enforcement. If they're assaulting you or conducting some unlawful action against you, you have a legal right to defend yourself. I would strongly encourage you to consider that as an absolute last resort.
Yes.
Because you're outnumbered and you're outgunned, literally, and that should not be, so I gave you the direct answer, but my strong encouragement is to not let that end up being your situation. Yes?
Yeah, which reminded me, do you know the status of Senate Bill 5 right now, which would allow a civil cause of action?
So, perhaps.
Questions?
So the question is, thank you, Jim. So the question is, what's the status of Senate Bill 5? Yesterday, I heard that it's being pulled back because of issues with the governor's office. I don't have that confirmed yet. I plan to get confirmation on Monday because I've been involved in discussions around Senate Bill 5, but I just heard yesterday that there's a significant issue with it. So it's to expand immigrant protections even further than we did last year. So what I'll do is I'll connect with Pat on Senate Bill 5 and she could email the group if that works. Yes?
Also 1276.
Which one is 1276?
It allows inspections into ICE facilities and requires medical care and all those pieces.
So House Bill 1276, I'll check on that. I believe that's still pending. It has not passed.
It's in finance, I think.
Right.
But
So I'll check on the status and I'll email Pat about Senate Bill 5 and House Bill 1276.
thank you.
Sure. Doug?
Again, I'm not going to get up if that's all right, but so mentioning ICE assaulting, we need to be able to make the disambiguation between that and ICE lawfully detaining someone maybe for obstruction or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, the civil rights movement, they always focused on, specifically what is constitutionally defensible. And I feel like that's my guiding light. If ICE is doing something, they want to try to enforce a law that I don't feel is constitutionally defensible, that's something that I felt like I could fight. Whereas if it's something they have a right, I wouldn't. But I'd love to hear your input on how to make that clarity between what to do and what not to do.
So the question is about when to act contrary to ICE, when to take action when you believe ICE is acting in a manner that's unconstitutional based on your own view or your own belief. I worry about one putting themselves at risk in a high-intensity moment with a belief of what the law may allow or require. So I'm not saying we should just silently go to the gallows, but I wouldn't want people saying, I think this is what the law should allow, and acting on that. Obviously, if someone's assaulting, like ICE comes in right now and they start assaulting this gentleman, someone should take action. I would certainly, I would take action, just physically. But if there's doubt or any question about whether it's actually a crime that ICE is committing, like let's say they come in and they go up to Pat and they say, you have an immigration violation. We're not sure they're telling the truth or not, and we're not fond of what they're doing. I'd be careful in that moment, because it's possible she does, right? So I wouldn't want you in a decision where you make an illegal analysis in the moment, unless it's really absolutely clear. But that's why calling 911 right from the start, they're coming in, you call 911 right away.
And if I could extend it also to protesters.
Please use the microphone. You really.
Yeah, I apologize. I'll have to have
Use
it.
the microphone.
Yeah, the microphone will help folks online. I would also extend the question also to protesters, not just dealing with ICE, but also our local law enforcement when they have to request, if they declare a riot and say, we need you to step back, we don't need you, we don't want you blocking traffic, things like that. I meet a lot of protesters that want to be very angry and want to be very hostile to all law enforcement. They're just tired and exhausted, but I feel like it's important to make that distinction. So I'm trying to figure out how to communicate that to them, where to put those lines.
And I think that's our last question, am I right? Is that what you guys were saying?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Or we could take one more, it's up to you.
One more if there's somebody who has not asked a question yet.
So I would encourage you, since we're going down a path of protest questions, there are groups that can do deep, in-depth trainings on protests specifically, and I can connect with Pat and connect you with one of those groups, and they come in and they do the law just around protest. and how to protest safely, and how not to get yourself in trouble or get yourself hurt. To answer the question though, Doug, people are really angry and scared right now, and I get that, and that's real. But I also want people to be careful. So I wouldn't want people making decisions thinking, I feel like this is justified, if they're not sure it's legally justified. So that's why I really appreciate these questions, because I think it gets to the heart of, we don't want to wait for the courts. We want to stand up and do what's right. But I also want to make sure people aren't exposing themselves to legal ramifications, injury, or worse. So that's why we can arrange for a group to come in and talk about how to protest safely and just make that a focus of an entire training, and I'm happy to help facilitate that. How about one more question, if you have one?
Could we get a round of applause for Mr. Dougherty? Our next meeting is May 2nd. Keep an eye on your email for a topic and how that's going on. And Tyler is going to be out in the lobby with his laptop. If you want to change your APA designation, you want to be a voting member, you want to get emails from different action teams, he will take care of that. And we'll stick around for questions one-on-one. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.